everybody. Welcome to another season of Research Files. I'm your host, Gary Waddell. We have a very interesting show for you tonight. We'll be talking about Nevada's population of pupfish and their amazing ability to survive without oxygen for extended periods of time. Kuang will discuss his work in cancer detection, and we'll learn how gender and race may affect our perceptions of public officials. But first, Tom Piechota, the Vice President of Research for Economic Development at UNLV, is here to bring us up to date on what's going on here at the school. Summer's over. We're back, all back to work. What's new?
It's great to be here, and thanks again for another season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, lots going on. We had another good year last year. We finished out fiscal year 15 and up in research again. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the real highlights, I think, was a lot of our economic development activity. Patents and disclosures are way up, so we're pretty excited about that. President has come in and done a great job in terms of just promoting the university, and research is really central to the top tier plan, so a lot of exciting things going on.
Next month, Research Week here at UNLV, October 12th through the 15th.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so one of the things we decided to do, we had a one-day event last year where we really highlighted research in terms of reporting out on what we were doing on research last year in the fall, but we decided to build that out for a whole week this year and really talk about what are we doing with research on campus, how do we support research on campus, how do we make faculty successful, what resources are available to do this, and then really open it up on Friday to bring on the people from the community and show them what we're doing in undergraduate research, a technology expo, so they see what we're doing. Open up our labs and really see what we're doing and see the great things going on. So it's a whole week of activities. Colleges are involved in it. Undergraduate, graduate students are involved in it. So it should be really exciting. We've got faculty that are giving keynote talks. We've got panel discussions that are going on too. So it's a real diverse portfolio of topics.
And in the spirit of the Got Milk campaign, you've got a Got Research campaign for faculty members.
Yeah, so what we do every year in the fall, fall is when we bring on new faculty and they're really enthusiastic about getting their research going. And that's a big part of them being successful. So we want to make sure they have the right resources to be successful. So we make sure we bring them in and we say, you want to do research, what are the resources you need to be successful, whether that's the grant support that they need to go after getting grants, the infrastructure support, the other kind of resources that they need on campus to be successful. And we make sure we put them in a room and kind of put those people in front of them and provide those services to them.
You've got funding also now for the I think we talked about this a little bit last year, the UNLV Cleveland Clinic Lou Ruvo study that you're doing, so you've got more money for that.
So yeah, last year we were talking about this. It wasn't official yet, but really a couple weeks ago we had the official announcement. So it's over $11 million with this partnership between the Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health and UNLV, and this is a National Institute of Health funding. Lou Ruvo Center is really the main recipient of this, and UNLV will get about $2 million of this. And this is really to do work in the area of Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease, and really solving, some of those challenges that we have in this terrible disease. But there's so much we can be doing in this area. Whether that's, we have a faculty member working in psychology that's going to be doing some work in this area, but also we have our supercomputer that's going to be helping this in terms of managing all the data that's generated from these studies. So it's just a great partnership. They're a great center here in Las Vegas and a great resource that we're going to be looking forward to future opportunities that we work with them.
As the population ages, these two become more and more and more important to research into those.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's so much discovery to be made in those areas.
Research and economic development activities on the rise at UNLV as well, I understand.
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier. If we think about the progression of how research is done, we have great discoveries, and you'll hear about some of those tonight, whether that's about the pupfish or in the area of health and medical services. And then we look to how those discoveries are moved forward sometimes in terms of patent disclosures and commercialization. We've made so much progress over the last 3 years in terms of the commercialization of research. For instance, this past year we had 3 startup companies come out of the university. That's the first startup companies we ever had come out of the university. And we hope those companies are successful and generate additional revenue that come back to the university too. And that's great for the economy of Southern Nevada and great for the university too.
Research expenditures up, number of patents applied for up.
Right. Research expenditures have been up for the third year in a row, and we hope to continue to grow that as part of the top tier plan. Same thing with patent disclosures too. So it's an exciting time. We'll continue to grow and continue to look for the way that we can work with the state and get state support for that also.
Very good. All in the right direction.
Great. Thanks, Gary.
Tom, thank you very much.
All right.
We'll be right back.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Ready or not, here I come.
Take time to be a dad today.
Daddy, I'm gonna find you.
You always made sure I brushed my teeth.
You told me that smart was cool.
You always told me to dream big.
To all of those parents who took the time to make raising their children their most important job, we'd like to say,
Thank you.
Thank you.
From the bottom of my heart, thanks, Mom and Dad.
This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, no thanks, not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
I remember the moment.
I'll never forget that moment.
That moment?
It was a moment that changed my life. I'd been training with my team for months, and now we had been called up for the first time. The real deal. Wildfires were getting dangerously close to homes. At that moment, I got my first taste of just how important the Guard is to my community.
See how the Guard can be an important part of your life at NationalGuard.com.
Joining me now is Associate Professor of Political Science, Rebecca Gill. Rebecca, thank you for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Let me get this right. You have a multi-year grant to study bias in the evaluation of public officials.
That's right, I do.
Explain that.
Well, this is a National Science Foundation grant, and I proposed work to study how social cognition theory creates stereotypes about what it means to be a good judge, and that those stereotypes can kind of creep into the way that lawyers evaluate the performance of judges.
Kind of this picture people have in their head of what a judge should be.
That's
like,
exactly right. Exactly
whether it's,
right.
A television image that's been created or something like that.
That's exactly right.
Do they normally give multi-year grants for things like this?
It depends what you mean by normally. Of the grants that they give for research like this, it's not uncommon for those to be sort of in this structure. But this NSF program is the Law and Social Sciences program, and it's a relatively competitive grant process. So they don't give out a lot of these, but when they do, they're often in this kind of format.
Back to the bias. What kind of biases are we looking at?
Oh, well, I study mainly implicit gender bias. Sadly, the reason that I don't look at race and ethnicity bias is because there aren't really that many judges yet who fit in those categories, especially if we're talking of women of color in the judiciary. There are just so few of them that it's difficult to get any traction on the question of whether the intersection of race and gender has specific effects on the way that judges are perceived.
How are you doing the study? Is it the local judges that we would know, or is this are you studying judges all across the country?
Well, my pilot study was actually on Clark County judges, and I did that pilot study with professor in the law school at Boyd School of Law, Sylvia Lazos, and we did an article with one of my graduate students, Mallory Waters, dealing with implicit bias in those judging the judges
the
surveys.
surveys they do every year, the RJ does, yes.
And so this project is sort of an extrapolation on that, where I'm looking at a number of different state-sponsored judicial performance evaluation systems to see if there are any systems that do this better. The Judging the Judges survey doesn't do this very well.
I know sometimes they even tout the fact that they were down on the list, that they're tough on the judges.
Yeah, it can be true.
tough on the attorneys. Is this going to change, the way, we think of judges, or is this? What's your hope at the end of this that it does, or just maybe gives us information to look at?
Well, I hope it will do a number of things. I'm currently preparing to write a book about this topic. And one of the things that I want to accomplish with that book is to look at the various ways that states are doing this now and to try to find some best practices for ways that states can evaluate their judges without falling into this trap. Secondly, I'm hoping to sort of develop a more nuanced idea of how this sort of stereotype bias theory works when we are evaluating public officials in all the halls of power. So I'm thinking somebody like presidential candidates, for example.
Interesting. Very good. Also, you're working on campus here to try to improve gender equality.
I am working with a fantastic team of scholars on campus to develop a research program, again through the National Science Foundation, this time through a different program, to try to assemble some information about how women faculty, particularly women in STEM disciplines on campus, are being recruited and retained and evaluated and rewarded for what they do on campus.
Also, we talked about this a minute ago, First Amendment. You've written on that, and you have done things on that. Close to my heart as a former journalist, or at least maybe once a journalist, always a journalist, I guess. But First Amendment is always really important.
Yeah, I have dabbled in the First Amendment. I teach a class regularly here on campus on the First Amendment and the way that the court deals with First Amendment questions. And so the flow of constitutional law about the First Amendment never ends. Every time the court takes a new case like that, it changes what the law means.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Keep up the good work. We'll check back with you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Oh, hey, bud.
Oh.
Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
It's a school night. With Gary and Todd?
Yeah?
Not sure about those two. I've been meaning to ask you. This is tougher than I thought. Is there any drinking going on in this crowd?
No.
I hope not, because alcohol can lead you to say things and do things that you really wish you hadn't. Isn't this what you're supposed to say?
I know.
So if any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't. I'd do anything to keep you safe.
Okay, I will.
I hope this is working.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you.
Ryan.
Yeah?
So start the conversation even before they're teenagers.
Good idea.
For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Lazy bones, loafing through the day. You always seem to find the easy way. Moving like you're rolling gray. Never heard a word I say.
All over America, entire families are backsliding. We're no longer just sedentary, we're stationary, and that's bad news for your bones. At any age, bones need weight-bearing activity to grow strong and stay strong. So go outside, take the steps, play with the dog. Just get up, get out, get moving.
Never keep your bones that way. Never heard a word I say.
public service message from the American Academy of Orthopaedic Surgeons.
We are back now with Kuang, an assistant professor of UNLV's Health Physics Department. First of us, tell us what medical physics is. And by the way, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. Medical physics is a medical specialty to apply the radiation physics to, for example, cancer diagnosis or treatment. So a clinical medical physicist is work very closely with the clinicians in the Department of Radiology, Radiation Oncology, or nuclear medicines in hospital to make sure the patient get the treatment or diagnosis correctly and safely. And as a medical physicist, we're also looking into apply the new radiation physics approach to guide the treatment or guide the diagnosis.
You were talking about sarcoma here. Tell us first what sarcoma is.
Sarcoma is a certain type of the cancers. They originate from different kind of the tissue, for example, from the bone or from soft tissue, for example, muscles. Sarcoma is usually from most likely to occur in the arms and legs. Beside the adult patients, they also apply to the children's and teenager patients. So our studies try to looking into for the patients from the adults and also from the teenager and children patient.
I was reading in the piece I read about you today that as they do with some cancers, they try to do chemotherapy before they go in to do surgery.
Yes.
Or radiation before they go in to shrink the tumor.
Yeah.
But in sarcoma cases, or at least some of them, they can't tell whether they've done any good till after the surgery.
Yes, this is a routine protocol for treat sarcoma. So when a patient coming in, the clinician usually requests them to do some chemo or radiation therapy before they shrink the tumor first before they send the patient to the surgery. However, the chemo or radiation therapy cycle usually take like 3 months. You know, sometimes the time is very critical for the cancer patient. And only until 3 months, and the clinician will send the patient to some kind of the imaging test, and then see the tumor size shrink or not. And then if not, clinician need to change the treatment protocol or use different kind of the approach. However, you know, at this kind of the time frame, maybe the optimal treatment timing window already passed. So we try to move from 3 months to 3 weeks. So when they start treat the chemo and radiotherapy from the sarcoma patient on the 3 weeks, we're using some kind of the broad draws and MRI imaging to looking into some kind of early change in some kind of genetics markers and also imaging features change. And we can predict the 3 months treatment efficacy. And if not that good for these patients, and then we can have the clinician to change the treatment protocol right away. So from the timing window, we can save the treatment resource, and we also can save the patient's time. And in that way.
And lives.
Yes.
Prostate cancer. I'm a prostate cancer survivor. I chose to have surgery because it was fairly early in my life. But talking about radiation, and one of the things that you're working on is how to target the tumors in the prostate better.
Yeah, usually most of the cancer that recurrent is because the treatment is not completely in the treatment region, in the tumor region. So currently we're doing some kind of using some kind of new imaging modality we call a positron emission tomography. So this imaging can see the tumor boundary much clearer than the CT scan, CAT scan. So we're using this kind of new imaging modality to delineate the tumor boundary. So the radiation oncologist can, based on this information, to boost the dose to the prostate and also maintain the safety profiles to the surrounding tissue. So in that way, the treatment is more targeting and also can increase the dose and to make the treatments more effectively and more efficiently also.
We've had guests tonight who've done a lot of good things, or are doing a lot of good things, but you're the first one who's actually working on saving lives.
Thank you.
We thank you so much for being here, and good luck with your research.
Thank you.
All right, keep us posted.
Yep.
All right, we'll be right back.
At what age is the color that your skin was meant to be no longer beautiful? Every year, millions of young women try to change the skin they were born with and say they die for darker skin. Sadly, some actually do. Melanoma is the second most common cancer in teens and young adults, and 1 person dies from melanoma every hour. Change your thinking, not your skin. Stop tanning. Learn more at spotskincancer.org. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
I realized at that moment, these people really needed us. And I was going to make a difference, right here in my community.
Be there for your community at NationalGuard.com.
Drownings are a leading cause of death for young children. Make sure kids learn how to swim. Always watch them in and around water and properly fence all pools. Simple steps save lives. To learn some new ones, visit poolsafely.gov.
In Vietnam, we took care of each other.
In combat, you look out for your battle buddy.
I'd do anything for my unit.
When things get tough, it's great to know
somebody's there for you.
Every step of the way.
DAV stands behind America's veterans to make their transition back home easier, with free services and help getting the benefits they've earned. Help us fulfill the promise to our men and women who served. Go to DAV.org to learn more.
I remember the moment.
I'll never forget that moment.
That changed my life.
At that moment, it hit me. This is why I joined the Guard. We're soldiers, always ready to protect our country. But we've also got communities. Family, friends, neighbors who count on us. I couldn't believe it. I just saved a life to somebody from my hometown.
See what it means to be a citizen soldier at NationalGuard.com.
Welcome back. We are joined now by Interim Director and Associate Professor of Life Sciences, Frank Van Breukelen. Thank you very much for being with us. Back in the early 80s, I went up to Amargosa Valley to see wild horses, and I stumbled across the pupfish.
Awesome place,
and
Ash Meadows.
I have been a fan of pupfish at Devil's Hole and in Ash Meadows ever since. You are doing research on pupfish.
Indeed. We got interested actually as a side project, and the side project ended up taking us several years in order to figure out what was going on. We thought it was going to be really easy, measure some oxygen consumption, get how much energy they need to survive, and it turned into a very complex story.
So what are you finding?
Well,
tell us about the oxygen deprivation that they can go through.
So they do a process that we call paradoxical anaerobism, meaning that they use anaerobic processes even though there's oxygen around. Normally we associate the use of oxygen with a more efficient pathway. And these animals are actually using what is usually considered a very inefficient process of anaerobic metabolism. If you were to sprint, you would generate lactic acid, and you can only do it for a short period of time. These guys produce ethanol instead of lactic acid, and they diffuse that ethanol away into the water, and they can go for extended periods of time. We had a fish that went for 149 minutes continuous with no oxygen consumption, even though oxygen is around. And we had another fish that did about 5 hours of this with a couple of brief interruptions of oxygen consumption. So it can be really extensive.
And why do they do it? Do you know?
We think that the reason why they do it is because they live in a very stressful environment. Long ago, Mojave means by the water. And long ago, there was lots of water around and it was much cooler. And then over the last couple of thousand years, that water receded, and the fish ended up in the warm springs that characterize their current environments. And so they evolved basically in cooler waters. They're now in warmer waters, and that warmer water causes them a lot of stress, and we think that we actually know the mechanism by which they do this paradoxical anaerobism, but we're still trying to tease that out.
Wow. There's a downside to this for the fish.
Absolutely. If we look at fish that live in Devil's Hole where the water is warmer, they live for very short periods of time. 6 to 9 months, versus if I were to look at fish in Ash Meadows where the water's a little bit cooler and it's almost the same fish. About 25% of them are between 3 and 4 years old. So it seems to be really rough on them, and we have all kinds of damage indicators that say that they're having a hard time.
Devil's Hole is the one that is so protected, right?
Right.
Because that is a separate species or a unique species of pupfish?
I actually think that what we're looking at is evolution in action. I think that we have the best playground, if you will, for evolution in Ash Meadows and in Devil's Hole. Devil's Hole has some very unique features that make life really difficult for the fish. And I think that this difficult life, this stress, is actually increasing the rate of evolution. And there's some awesome biology to be done there.
Yeah, if you only live 9 months, you've got to do everything quickly.
Exactly.
So how is the population of Devil's Hole and of the Ash Meadow pupfish doing?
All of these guys are endangered. So the Ash Meadows pupfish are endangered, as well as Devil's Hole. Devil's Hole, of course, is the ones that were of extreme concern. In 2013, there were 36 adults. The last count that I heard, there was probably about 120 adults. But it fluctuates by season, and we have a refuge population now that seems to be doing quite well in an artificial refuge that they built nearby.
So we will never lose the pupfish?
I wouldn't say that.
We could?
I think we could. Particularly if global climate change continues, this decrease in the population. There used to be a few hundred fish in the 1970s. The decrease in the population coincides with the highest temperatures recorded in the area.
Sounds like a long-term project. Thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate it. We will
you.
watch for that. I will, anyhow. I have a personal interest in it. Thanks, Frank. I appreciate
Excellent.
it.
Thank you.
That's going to be it for us for tonight. Thank you for being with us for this first edition this year. We will see you again next time.